Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hitting the Road to 1.5 degrees Celsius, sharing a financial institution's journey. We're here with ResponsAbility, a sustainable investment house that specializes in impact investing, South Pole, a company that provides the tools to achieve a low carbon reality, and also CIFI, the primary non-bank financial institution in Latin America and the Caribbean, specializing in infrastructure and energy financing. Before we kick off, we're going to launch a poll to see where everyone's dialing in from today. And while you're answering our poll, I'll just introduce our Oprah Winfrey of the day, Mariana. She's a technical assistance officer at ResponsAbility, and she will moderate the session. How are you doing today, Mariana?
Hi, Stacy. Actually doing great. Bars and restaurants are reopening today where I live, so you can guess where I'll be headed to in 45 minutes.
Excellent, excellent. All right, it looks like most people have voted in the polls, so I will close it and we'll see where everyone is coming in from today. There we go. We've got a lot of people from Europe and Latin America. Excellent. So I will hand over to you now, Mariana, and I will join again at the end for the Q&A.
Thanks, Stacy, and hi, everyone. Many thanks for joining today. I'm very actually pleased to be moderating this session today. I'll try to be as good as Oprah, and I'm actually about to welcome not two, but three very royal guests. But just before that, and since we have such a diverse audience today, let me just try to clear this up for everyone on the line. Why are we actually talking about a 1.5 degree alignment? Well, here you might know that we are, of course, referring to the Paris Agreement that was adopted in 2016 by the COP21. The Paris Agreement is aiming at limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees and actually trying to pursue efforts to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. So you might know as well that the Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty and considered today as one of the landmarks of the fight against climate change. That being said, about 5 years down the road today, what do we see and can a low carbon world become a reality? Well, despite the drop in carbon emissions that we saw, with the COVID-19 pandemic, at the current pace, the world is unfortunately still headed toward a temperature rise of over 3 degrees before the end of the century. For us to be able to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, it is actually estimated that we would need to mobilize $3,500 trillion per year until 2050. This actually leaves plenty of room for financial institutions worldwide, but also private and public partnerships to invest in energy transition. So what we see today is that more and more financial institutions, including in emerging markets, are adopting climate strategies, investing in climate change mitigation and green energy. And guess what? Our first guest speaker today is one of them. So I'm actually extremely pleased to welcome Carla Chismar, who is the head, or should I say the queen of ESG at CIFI. CIFI is a financial institution based in Panama, and for the past couple of years, ResponsAbility has been working with CIFI on various joint initiatives to support the implementation of their climate mitigation strategy. It's been quite a journey, I must say, and Carl, I'm sure you will agree with that. And although it's not over, CIFI recently achieved some interesting milestone, and we thought it could be nice to share those with the larger audience. So Carla, welcome, and many thanks for accepting to share your journey with us today. I can't see you on the screen. I'm sure you will be appearing soon now. Yes, here you are. Hi, Carla. Can you hear us?
Okay, perfect.
Welcome.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you.
Can you actually tell us a little bit more about CIFI and maybe what brought you to the road to 1.5-degree alignment.
Thank you, Marianne. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And I will start by explaining a little bit about CIFI and like this is all about our road, right? The journey that we've been constructing over the years. CIFI is a financial institution private that is or was developed to be to provide financing for infrastructure in the Latin American region for the middle market with the intention of, supporting sustainable development in the region. So since the beginning, it was contemplated that we were going to work towards that goal. And in that road, well, CIFI decided early on to incorporate environmental and social risks into the whole assessment prior to financing and during the life of loans. And that was our main focus for many years. But as we all know, our market and our industry has evolved quite a bit. And climate change has been a topic that it's impossible to avoid or ignore. And everybody has to play a role. So during this natural evolvement of our field, we've been working on a more strategic approach in terms of ESG and sustainability, company-wise, not only focus on specific risks per project, but also looking at the entire portfolio and the entire way the company behaves itself. And it's in that spirit that we started our first technical assistance with our partners from ResponsAbility to develop this ESG strategy at the company level. And within the strategy, we identified that climate change was indeed one of the main topics that we needed to, address almost immediately. And it not only referred to, like I mentioned before, specific risks per project, but also looking at our portfolio, what are the real risks in terms of physical or transitional impacts of climate change in our portfolio? How do we measure this? What are other peers doing? And how do you develop an alignment to these international treaties that we've agreed that are relevant and we want to be part of that? And all of that sort of like brought to this point in which we're at, and that we've been engaging with, of course, ResponsAbility that supply the technical assistance funds and everything else to help us. And then obviously they brought South Pole as well to work with us as the technical experts to conduct this entire, let's say, project, because it's still a project, We have a base now, but there is a lot of work to do ahead of us.
Thank you, Carla. I'm sure some people on the line today may be just starting the climate journey, or maybe willing to start their journey there. What do you think were the key conditions that made it possible for CIFI?
Well, definitely, I think willingness and understanding of this potential risks of not doing anything or continuing business as usual. That was one thing. And there's obviously the standards that we follow, like Equator Principles, which we're members of. And then there's this whole new aspect, which is TCFD, which is basically disclosing what are your risks. That was one of the main triggers of this. And obviously, once we evaluated our portfolio and we realized that, 50%, almost 50% of our portfolio is renewable energy, there is a great potential there to continue exploring, new green, credit lines and new opportunities for business. It's not only looking at what are the problems or the risks, but also what are the associated opportunities, and also trying to match the entire walk this talk, right? So we needed to incorporate it and make it a reality. And so I think there's several different factors that, sort of took us to this point where we needed to incorporate this in a more comprehensive way throughout the company.
Thanks, Carla, for the very nice insights. My next questions would actually be for ResponsAbility and Southwold, and you just mentioned them, Carla. So I would actually like to welcome two gentlemen to the conversation. Yeah, they are actually magically appearing on the screen now. There's David and Charlie should be around as well. Welcome to both, and thanks a lot for joining. My next question is actually for you, David. Hi, David. You're leading the definition and the implementation of ResponsAbility's climate fund investment strategies, and more specifically with financial institutions. Carla just mentioned something, and actually, it would be actually great if you could clarify something for all of us now. What does portfolio decarbonization mean?
Oh, thank you, Mariana and Carla. That's a great question. I think the key to understand is that every financial institution has its own portfolio. They lend to retail clients, they lend to small businesses and corporates. Those businesses are in different sectors. They can be in agriculture, construction, energy. Each loan has its own carbon footprint, essentially, and the portfolio as a whole has a carbon profile. So when we talk about portfolio decarbonization, we're talking essentially at a high level about two things. One is, what is the carbon footprint of my portfolio today? And two, what steps can I take to align on a pathway towards 1.5 degree alignment, for example, to decarbonize that portfolio in the future? It could mean choosing less carbon intensive sectors, reallocating a portfolio towards renewable energy, more efficient transportation and agriculture, various pathways available there. But yeah.
Thank you. That was very clear. Follow-up question. Carla just mentioned that ResponsAbility had a role in this journey somehow. Can you tell us a little bit more about this climate partnership between ResponsAbility and CIFI?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So I think what might be helpful is if I take a quick step back. And when we think about responsibility, one of the funds that we have, our climate fund, is the Global Climate Partnership Fund, the GCPF. This fund was designed and built as a public-private partnership to mitigate climate change. So what makes us unique is, on the one hand, we have long-term credit facilities, but also a deep network of in-house energy specialists, carbon impact specialists, and then a really comprehensive and flexible technical assistance facility that is supported by our British and German government donors. So this combination of tools allows us to work closely with institutions and build climate strategies. Now, while we do this, what's really important is additionality, right? We have to be doing something different, adding value to the market, providing an offering that is not widely available to financial institutions where we invest. This additionality can take many forms, right? If we're working with an institution with zero experience, it means building up a green lending partnership from scratch, building that vision from day one, and providing all the expertise necessary to build a robust climate strategy. If we're dealing with an institution that's very advanced, then we have to find added value. How can we really contribute here as this climate fund? CIFI, as you've noted from Carla's introduction, is clearly the advanced type institution. So when we were, extensive experience in renewable energy project structuring, one of the best environmental social management systems we have in our portfolio, really top team. So when we were thinking, what can we do to add value to CIFI operations? And this opportunity emerged. It emerged actually at one of our Latin America conferences where we bring all of our counterparties together to discuss. The idea was born, and I'm really happy that we've been able to plug all these pieces together and leverage the various options we have.
Thank you, David. Charlie, you actually played a key role in this, and you were very closely involved in this project that David just mentioned. I know that your team at Southwold also got their hands dirty supporting other financial institutions, both, some with zero experience, as David just mentioned, and some more advanced, supporting them to build ambitious climate strategies. From your experience and with your expertise, what do you think is the best starting point for a financial institution out there willing to work on a climate strategy?
Thank you, Mariana. Well, like you could imagine, it really depends. There's no need for complex data management system or, for instance, a large sustainability team. Although, of course, it can make the process more efficient. But I would say from our experience at South Pole, the must-have are management buy-in, internal resources, and a partner. So first, in terms of management buy-in, the financial institution needs to have at least some people in the top management that understand climate change and its ripple effects, and that are willing to push their organization to tackle it. And that was clearly the case for CIFI, and this helped us increase the efficiency of the mandate. And why do you need this management buy-in? Because people tend to forget that climate and sustainability topics cannot be treated in silo. Climate strategy is actually the strategy of the financial institution itself, not only of its ESG department. Then you need internal resources. You need at least one team member, usually from the ESG or sustainability team, but not always. It could be a portfolio manager, for instance, that is fully committed to this work, depending on the size of the organization, of course. This means that this person is going to be the point of contact within the organization, helping to map, centralize, and share all the available data within the firm. And then last but not least, you need a good partner, whether it is an NGO, an audit firm, or an environmental consultancy firm. We really recommend to have a partner. And this is in order to make sure to build a robust climate strategy that is reviewed by a third party.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, let's say I'm a financial institution. I have got all this, right? What do I need? Or let's say, what would be the 3 main steps or golden rules if I want to engage further and to make sure that I go through a successful and smooth journey?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, I'm going to echo what Carla said. The step 0 is to understand the situation. So what is climate change? Why do you need to take action? How do you take action? For instance, there are over 50 financial decarbonization organizations out there. Even for CIFI, this has been a whole journey, not just an overnight work. Then once we've gone after step 0, if we try to put it in a simple way, the 3 steps that we took and that could be replicated for other financial institutions are: 1, to create a GHG accounting track record; 2, to benchmark climate indicators; and 3, to take action and set targets. So in terms of creating a GHG accounting track record, in order to decarbonize, financial institutions need to understand where their climate impact comes from. Financial institutions' emissions stem mainly from their investment activities, not from their operations, like in the case of many corporates. Over 99% of the emissions of a financial institution actually come from their investment. And these emissions need to be calculated not for only 1 year, but over 2 to 3 years with a consistent and recognized methodology, such as the global standard of the PCAF initiative, to create a track record and to obtain a good picture of an institution's GHG profile. Then once you've done that, you can start doing your benchmarking your climate indicators. So calculating an institution's scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, including investments, across harmonized key performance indicators enables them to compare results with peers and benchmarks, as well as current and historical performance. And in the case of CIFI, the 4 main KPIs that we used are absolute emissions, portfolio carbon intensity, physical intensity, and the share of green investments. In this case, it was the renewable energy in the energy portfolio, with the latter being dependent on the client's profile. And then final step, once you've created your GHG accounting track record, benchmark your climate indicators, then that's the time to take action and set targets. So financial institutions don't need to wait until they have found the perfect methodology to start taking action. Initial steps can take the form of a progressive reduction in carbon intensity or the exclusion of certain sectors like coal. Once the company has a good understanding of its GHG profile, a recognized methodology like the Science-Based Target Initiative can be used to set a target. I hope this was clear enough. In case you want to know more about it, there's a link to the South Pole Fact Sheet Decarbonization for Financial Institutions, on which you can click to get more information.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, you just mentioned that there's a handout that was developed by South Pole, so all participants today can actually just click on it and you'll have a bit like a recap of what Charlie just mentioned. Carla, I'm sure all this rings a bell to you, and you know, when we're talking about like GHG accounting, benchmarking, setting targets, this sounds fairly easy from Charlie, but I guess that, you know, with any kind of journey, there are always like unexpected challenges. And I was wondering, you know, do you have any advice for financial institutions while going through those three main steps?
Definitely. Charlie makes it a lot more easier. Although I would say that it depends on where you start and if you prepared yourself. I think we had two opportunities, two other technical assistants before during the final phase of this project to sort of prepare ourselves and build that management buy-in that Charlie was mentioning. I think that was a very important step that I'm happy that we covered from the beginning, so that the rest of this, process or journey was much easier because you have a permanent engagement from the different, decision-making bodies within the company. And that's what I think makes it a successful project, this one in particular. We face the same challenges as any other organization probably will face. For example, data collection, the quality of the data, getting your clients on board. Some of these requirements may be perceived as a burden, and it's not very commercial to be bothering your clients. So the success of this project is also because we had clients willing to fill those forms and gather that information for us. I think that was one of the main issues. Also, the timing for this last year was a challenging year for everybody due to COVID, and so collecting data was not the easy piece of this. And especially when we were already working with data with a different methodology than the one that South Pole obviously brought more professionally than what we were using before. So we had to sort of try to match and find solutions for those discrepancies. That is related to data. In terms of the whole organization, you're not always going to have everybody on board and agreeing on the same decisions. And there are different areas of the business that you have to consult with and understand, because decarbonizing a portfolio, like Charlie and David were mentioning, might, suggest that you have adjustments in policies and procedures, and also within the business plan of the company looking ahead. And you're talking about 10, 15 years. So the markets evolve really fast, and not always have all the answers at one point to be able to project such a challenging endeavor, which is decarbonizing a portfolio. And it is a reality that Latin America and the Caribbean is just sort of starting to progress or see some traction in this, and especially in our sector. I'm talking about financial institutions in particular, to sort of like learn about your carbon footprint. There are a lot of novelty concepts that you have to explain to different partners, and I think those are the general challenges, the day-to-day, also finding the right timing to do all of this and the right partner to work with. Because I think if I have to say it, I think South Pole really eased our process, because they simplify and they sort of like measure everything they could do on their own, so we wouldn't have to do a lot of work, or we wouldn't have to go and exhaust our clients with requests. And I think that's what makes a good, consultant, that they can make your life very easy. And everything that we prepared was also very explained, sort of in like capsules and very digested, so it would be easy for everyone in different areas of the business to understand. And I think that reduced a lot of the challenges of trying to move forward. We are now at the second stage, I would say, which is continue to collect data to build a more robust case and to be able to present this to our board of directors and different stakeholders that make decisions in CIFI, and how to shape in the future our policies and procedures. We're definitely going to revisit our exclusion list. We're definitely going to revision exposure to certain sectors. We're definitely going to explore what other business opportunities and green, sort of type of projects, moving also not away, but incorporating other different type of sectors. Not only renewable energy is the solution. I think there are other opportunities also for us out there in finding the right partners to do this. And even in the funding side of CIFI, we're also working with, developing specific sustainable funds to channel financing to more of this type of, projects that we want to promote, and that will help us eventually to reach our targets in terms of decarbonization, which we haven't, decided yet. We are working on setting targets, but I think, again, it seems like a lot of challenges, but they're not. I think they're all, after a while, you start incorporating ways to solve and to figure them out, and the opportunity is larger. And it's in the case of CIFI that we've been working so hard for so long, I think it feels like we're finally reaching to a point where we're seeing, or where we're sort of like harvesting the fruits of working so hard for this purpose. I hope that responds.
Yes, it does. And thank you very much, Carla, for this. I mean, it's nice to see that you didn't stop at, the strategy level, and definitely South Pole played a key role, but now it seems that you're already taking action. You just mentioned, reviewing your procedures, the exclusion list, and that's really, really nice to hear. David, CIFI seems to be a very unique animal out there, and I would not dare to say that I mean, from what Carla and Charlie are saying, I mean, it seems that, CIFI is very advanced, had already the buy-in from the management. Everything seems to be like super smooth somehow. From what you see, do you think this can be replicated by other financial institutions in emerging market? Do you need to be like a decarbonization champion?
No, I mean, thanks for the question, Mariana, and we love CIFI. We love them a lot. But what's interesting is that as a portfolio, on a portfolio basis, financial institutions around the world are well positioned to do this. What I really like about CIFI's business model and positioning is that being in the small to middle space on energy, they can really drive the greening of grids across Latin America, right? But with financial institutions in other financial institutions in South America, in Asia Pacific, in the Caucasus, we've got a lot of interest on this particular project, this opportunity. There are institutions that are working to explore decarbonization opportunities in their transport sector, in their agriculture sector, in their construction sector, even in the retail book, right? Promoting more energy efficient appliances. So what we can see is that this idea, this concept, can work across financial institutions, irrespective of being as advanced and as sort of renewable energy focused as CIFI is.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Let me try to recap a little bit what I've heard today from the three of you. I mean, it seems that the journey is definitely worth it. Can actually be quite an exciting journey. It can be also a long journey. I think you mentioned that, Carla, earlier, that it was a whole process. That's probably what makes it so important to get the management buy-in from the beginning. When you start this journey, you apparently don't need to be a climate superstar or a decarbonization champion to start this journey. As a financial institution, there's probably a bit of a prep work or homework that you can do to get ready, and somehow this is only something that you can do, getting buy-in from management, having, dedicating someone internally for technical resources, finding the right partner. Obviously, there are people out there that can help, and South Pole, as you might have heard today, is one key expert in the sector. So before we move to the Q&A session, I would like to give all participants the opportunity to tell us whether they would like to engage further and maybe be part of a technical training session to be organized by South Pole. So let us know. You should have, yes, right now, a quick poll appearing on your screen. Let us know if this would be of interest. And if that's the case, South Pole, maybe Charlie personally will reach out to you and organize this session together with you and your colleagues.
So we've only got about 60% in the poll, and then we'll jump into some questions here. I'll let the poll stay open for a little bit longer while we start with the first question, maybe. Here we have a question. It says, do you see some participation of the project finance lenders or equipment finance lenders in broader industries to set up a program with a focus on one of the sustainability initiatives? And then another follow-up question to that, are there economic drivers that facilitate such programs, such as access to lower cost of funds or others? I will close the poll and one of you can decide who's going to take that question. David?
David,
Sorry,
yes.
Stacey, I wasn't sure I heard the first question. Would you mind repeating that first one?
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you see some participation of the project finance lenders or equipment finance lenders in broader industries to set up a program with the focus on one of the sustainability initiatives?
No, thank you for that. It's a great question. I think that leveraging stakeholders in these markets is key. And equipment providers, equipment lenders, project finance lenders, there's a lot of financial innovation that can take place to steer funding towards energy efficient and renewable energy portfolios. So this is a key role that lenders have to play. That's what ResponsAbility is doing. Also through the fund that I mentioned, is enabling these partnerships on the ground to channel funds both from our funds to financial institutions, and then have financial institutions work with those lenders and EPC and equipment providers directly as well on this topic. Yes.
And then the follow-up, are there economic drivers that facilitate such programs, such as access to lower cost of funds or others?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest driver is sort of the fundamental transition taking place towards clean energy. It used to be that solar power was really expensive. There was limited expertise. People thought that green was impossible to achieve outside of the Nordic countries and a select few others. What we're seeing now is that clean energy is just great business also for a lot of clients. It reduces their energy bills. It's more reliable forms of electricity. It's also, we're innovating different ways to consume and produce energy. So really the drivers are various and market driven. Where we're seeing a need is not so much on the concessional or lower access to lower pricing side, but on creating market awareness and solving some of the misperceptions or the fears that a lot of individuals, clients, and financial institutions have when they think about engaging this sector. Misperceptions on risk, for example, on renewable energy portfolios, or new concepts like energy as a service or cooling as a service. There's so much that can be done that can really tip the scale towards a decarbonized future. And I think that's where the work has to be done. And there you need multiple stakeholders like South Pole, like ResponsAbility, like CIFI. All players have to work together there.
Another question for you, David. What incentives would you give financiers to get them to pursue greener lending policies? And are these programs available in sub-Saharan Africa?
It's a great question. So I think the incentive, really, we want it to be sustainable. We want it to be commercially driven. We want them to see that investing and lending in the green space is not just about charity or about environmental objectives. It's really good business. And the first thing we do when we work with financial institutions is help them see the picture. You know, we map the potential for green and clean energy in their sectors, and help them understand how to underwrite, how to market, how to position themselves in these sectors so that they can tap that growing business opportunity. There's a massive first mover advantage right now in emerging and developing in these markets that we're focusing on now, and the incentives are really tangible and clear. And when it comes to what we can do to support, well, that's exactly the kind of program that we're looking at right now, right? Is connecting a financial institution, in this case, with key technical assistance facility, and then providers on the ground that can help put that all together. It's a great question.
And definitely Sub-Saharan Africa is part of the
Yes.
region that we can target.
That's a good point. We're just starting to work with a great new partner in Sub-Saharan Africa and doing some great work there, east, west, and south. So we're excited. It's a continent with huge potential in this space.
Great. So another challenging question for you, David. How can ResponsAbility simplify the assessment and disbursement of funds for greenhouse, clean energy, solar energy projects? How can we together create easy and accessible finance options?
I think that's a great question as well. So what we know is that financial institutions aren't engineers, right? They're bankers, and they have to think in terms of what's a convenient way to bring funding to the space that they're considering. If we overburden them with too many difficult technical questions, it can get very difficult. And this is a core part of what we do with ResponsAbility, and I'm very happy to say that the company believes in having carbon impact specialists, energy specialists. We have a team in-house that essentially become an institution's, 24/7 consultants on these matters, and simplify that process for the institution on an ongoing basis. Whether the institution wants to finance clean transport, for example, or clean appliances or solar PV, our experts work with TA hired consultants like South Pole to refine the different spreadsheets and the various things that need to be used and make it really efficient. So we're happy to say that so far the feedback is positive, in how what was at the beginning for a lot of institutions a huge burden and a huge fear is actually quite manageable once you have the right support.
And if I may add, sorry, to what you just said, David, I think that one important thing is that there are people out there, and here I'm thinking about the donors of this TA facility that you mentioned, that are ready and willing to support this pre-investment phase, when talking about risk assessment, supporting, financial institutions or other SMEs to reach a certain level. That's something that is out there, and then maybe of many of the people on the line today can probably benefit.
Great. This question is for you, Carla. How do you ensure that the whole company walks towards the same goals?
Well, there's never absolute certainty, right? But no, I think, like I mentioned, the step-by-step sort of like constructing this from scratch, incorporating or getting everybody involved makes it a possibility to finally align everyone. And when I'm saying everyone, I'm not only talking about this ESG vision versus, commercial or business vision. I think is also talking about portfolio management, is talking about, our lines of funding, or diversifying funding, or improving, our rating in terms of incorporating appropriately the different types of risks, including those of, climate change. I think is looking at the whole picture, what makes sense for the company, and talking about this, training staff, finding the right partners and the right voice, because I think it's also very relevant when you bring a third party and they come and then analyze your data independently. That gives comfort to everybody, because it's not only one opinion from, that might be biased in my case, obviously, but also bring in some experts that have been doing the same work for other financial institutions, that you can compare notes, you can identify market trends, you can identify business opportunities, and that all, comes back to figure out a way of merging this to sometimes even opposing views on what should be done, and that you find a middle ground that it is both environmentally sound and commercially viable, because we are a financial institution that is private and for profit, and we aim at growing and further developing our business model. So I think it has to be, integrated, all the different voices within the company. I don't know if that responds to the question, but that's how we've done it.
It's some work, basically, right?
And if I can say one thing,
It takes a lot.
If I can say one thing on that, Stacey, which I think is important too. What we find that really helps is when financial institutions can speak to themselves and work together in a way to understand how to overcome some of these obstacles, right? And something we're very happy and proud of is the series of events that, as the GCPF TA facility sponsors, where we bring together CEOs of banks and people like Carla in Panama, but people like Carla in Sri Lanka and Botswana, and they speak together. It's one thing when I'm telling you that green things are cool, and the clean energy is exciting and a good business opportunity, but when CEOs and people like Carla are talking to each other, it helps generate that management buy-in in a really powerful way. So, of course, right now with travel restrictions, it's a little bit more limited, but we're looking forward to leveraging that channel once again.
Excellent point, David. So I do have a question now for you, Charlie, as well. How important do you think it is for institutions to carry out science-based carbon risk modeling for their portfolios after collecting data on their scope 1 to 3 emissions?
Scope 1 and 2 for investments, or?
It says scope 1 to 3 for emissions, scope 1 to 3 emissions.
So I think that relates to the point that I was mentioning about what are the 3 steps. So in the context of the CIFI project, what we did is we actually measured the carbon impact for the investments. So that included scope 1, scope 2, and also scope 3 for oil and gas. And we also measured the transition risks, not in a quantitative way, although it's also something that can be done using a screening tool. But yes, we believe that is something useful and that could be performed in hand with the portfolio screening. And in the case of CIFI, it has been very useful to convince to acquire this management buy-in, demonstrating the business rationale for climate action. And we did that through the measuring of the famous 5 transition risk: policy risk, legal risk, market risk, technology risk, and reputation risks.
Great. Another question for you, David. Can ResponsAbility create fund of funds for India and Asian countries and other developing and emerging countries?
That's a great question. The fund we currently manage, we have a couple of climate funds and they're global funds, right? So we operate in Asia Pacific, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Caucasus, where we see sort of potential exceeding the ability of our current funds to serve. We're building new funds. So as a company, we're really looking at where can we establish sort of regionally focused funds to address the excess potential, let's say. There are countries that, for individual country exposure limits, we at our current climate funds just can't do more, but we see tremendous potential, right? So this is giving us a lot of information and a lot of vision. So yes, this is certainly something we're looking to develop.
And the follow-up is responsibility taking into consideration government projects into clean and solar energy in the public-private partnership model.
Absolutely. I mean, quite simply, the RAs, the GCPF can't exist without it's a close cooperation with all stakeholders, both at the local country, but then also at the investor level. So the fund was established by government agencies and now has crowded in a really interesting and diverse set of commercial and private investors. So that very much remains a core of the fund's DNA, let's say. But when we work with institutions on the ground, working with government programs it's important. It depends on a country by country basis. You know, some countries, their governments are very committed through policy and through frame support. They're really enabling the growth of, say, the EV sector, right? Other countries, the governments are sometimes a bit more of a stumbling block, right? And we have to find ways around those challenges. So what we do every time we partner with a new financial institution is we map all the stakeholders. We understand where the challenges are, and we build allies into the strategy. Absolutely, and that's again where our carbon impact and our energy specialists come in, because they're really the people on the ground that are kind of the orchestra directors for these strategies and making these things happen.
So in that same vein, are there projects you don't invest in because of the carbon footprint? Do you recommend any threshold in terms of greenhouse gas emissions scoring?
So GC, the Responsibilities Climate Fund does have criteria on where we can invest on renewable energy and then also energy efficiency. So of course we don't invest in fossil fuel, but then also within renewable energy, for example, we're very careful when it comes to biomass that isn't waste-based. When it comes to hydropower, we don't do dams. There are quite a few criteria that we take seriously for not just carbon impact, but also environmental social risk management impact. Energy efficiency, our criteria is 20%. So, and this is aligned with the Paris Agreement stipulation. Essentially, every energy efficiency investment we make has to reduce carbon emissions by 20% or more from what would normally happen, right? So, criteria are important, and what our teams do is help financial institutions really implement these criteria into their lending practices. When it comes to specific targets, I mean, I mentioned 20%, right? That's aligned with the Paris sort of guidance, but I think institutions can develop more ambitious thresholds as well. There's a lot of discussion right now around sort of the EU taxonomy, and different taxonomies are coming into play with more specific, sometimes sector by sector restrictions or guidance notes when it comes to carbon emissions.
So we are out of time officially now. So thank you for all your questions, everyone. If we didn't get to your question right now, someone from one of the panelists will reach out to you directly via email. Please follow us on LinkedIn if you want to stay up to date. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to any of the panelists if you want to learn more, become an expert in doing this, or just are interested in more information. So have a beautiful day, everyone. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.